Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
I think we got to talk about Modern this week, man.
Hell yeah. Dude, this has been talk about just like the biggest influx of cards in Modern ever. I think since the advent of the Modern format, there has never been a time in which the Modern format has had as many new cards like that are relevant, not even close.
Yeah, I mean, obviously War of the Spark was pretty influential on Modern, but then I mean they did.
I think War of the Spark might have actually been the high watermark too.
Yeah, yeah.
I think those two were the biggest. Like,
you think they were just like, hey, can we top this?
I mean, they are definitely making the sets for Modern now.
Yeah, well, I mean, where do you want to start? So we had a classic, we had a team open that was like all Moderns that wasn't unified. We had a good old Grand Prix, and then there's even some Moto results we're talking about.
Oh yeah, a lot. I mean, there were actually a whole bunch of Modern events in the last 3 days, in the last week on McGo, presumably because of Modern, with Modern Horizons legal there. It's not surprising that they're really pushing the format at the moment.
Yeah, where do you want to start?
Oh man, so the sort of the big storyline has been this Hogak deck, right? And I think that the Hogak deck has definitely demonstrated itself as the deck to beat, but not unbeatable, at least at the moment.
But you gotta work.
Oh my God, do you have to work? The number of rest in pieces is out of it's just there's Leyline of the Voids and Surgicals and rest in peace all over the place. Like,
look,
it's
man,
just
Tormod scripts.
There's some of that too.
There's everything.
Yeah, and there's a lot of everything because it takes a lot. It's like there was a Jund deck that from the league, 5th place in the league, that really spoke to, I think, some of the world we live in now, where he's playing Leyline of the Void, Nile Spell Bombs, Scavenging Ooze, just all of it.
Yeah, main deck Leyline of the Void.
And Scavenging Ooze. 2+2 Leyline of the Void. So 2 of the Leylines are in the main deck, 4 Leyline of the Voids total. 2 main deck Spell Bombs, 2 main deck Scavenging Ooze. I mean, I mean, when the format gets to a space where the Jund deck can only afford to play 2 Bloodbraid Elves, I mean, so it's a little bit intense. However, it definitely appears that, and actually something that we talked about a little bit back, last time we talked about this, was the idea of playing a couple Leylines main deck. And that has become the industry standard now. Obviously nobody was doing that 2 weeks ago, but now the vast majority, like a good majority of the Hogak decks, and it is the most popular deck in the format, but they're playing 2 Leylines main deck.
Oh,
with good reason.
It was it just overperformed in every way, right? Like in the top 64 of the Grand Prix, Hogak was approximately twice as represented as the next biggest archetype, right? Almost twice as many Hogaks in day 2 as is it Phoenix decks.
Well, and what's interesting though there is that in the team open, there were 24 Hogak decks in the what is effectively top 75, but there were 27 Phoenix decks. No, I'm sorry, 25 Phoenix decks.
Yeah, I don't know how this was working. I mean, you had these teams that were just like everyone's on Phoenix or something, right? Like that's the thing that happened.
Yeah, I mean, at one point on the final day, they're televising a match, and the feature match is Team 2 Phoenix and a Hogak versus Team 2 Hogak and a Phoenix.
I mean,
it's like, okay.
Is at some point it's just like you don't have enough cards? Is that like I don't know how that is.
I don't
Like
know.
it's not unified, right?
Nope, not unified at all.
Like you got we know what deck is good. Hey, let's hope. Let's start with the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
I want to
So
talk about Tom Ross. Is that okay?
sure. Why, dude? Tom Ross is always okay,
So Tom Ross, a master of the attack phase, coming.
and a master of the deck building phase.
Oh, he is a master of the false tempo. And he just coming off of a stint at WotC R&D, decides to dust off the old constructed skills, try his hand at a Grand Prix, and then top eights it with Hogak, of
Oh,
course.
dude, the fix was in. How do you just design Hogak and then just play it? Cheesy.
I mean, this deck is so Tom's got like a black red Hogak deck, and he's got
Well, no,
two.
he's playing the Jund version.
He's got
So
two
they
overgrown
almost
tombs, right?
yeah, but that's the most anybody has. Like the question of whether you can actually cast your Vengevines or not, uh, really comes down to whether you actually want to have Wisp Mare in your sideboard or not. A lot of the time, and he's going with Vengevine's main deck and giving up, playing Nature's Claim instead of Wisp Mare in the sideboard.
Yep. So this is like a pretty straightforward Hogak deck, right? So he's got
Extremely straightforward.
28 creatures. His fancy pants are one Dark Blast and one Lightning Axe. Everything else in his deck is a 4 of 18 lands. It's like
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I think even when a lot of the people who play two Leyline of the Voids, they're still playing one or two fancy pants removal spells. They're usually doing the shave like we talked about. Trim like one Gravecrawler or one Bloodghast or something. But Tom Ross is going with the straight up no chase.
so. If you were gonna Hogak this weekend in a modern tournament, would you take kind of the Jund version with no? I mean, it's not no. He's got 4 Leyline of the Void. They're just all on the sideboard. Um,
I'm main decking, no question. For
how
my,
many? Two?
I'm main decking two. No, I'm main decking two, and I'm main decking at least one Lightning Axe.
So talk to me about Lightning Axe. Like, what's the allure of that card? You just if you drew one too many Vengevines.
It gives you a removal spell. I mean, it's a tempo play, right, for 1 mana, but you get to keep going. Like you get to discard a card, man. Like what part of it? I mean, you want to kill stuff, right? Like having that extra option, there's value there.
Yeah. But it is a little bit of a weird card, right? Like, it's not like having one Dark Blast. Like one Dark Blast, you can draw it; it'll turn.
Well, I don't know. I want to kill Urza. That's the one I'm primarily trying to kill. Is Urza, Lord High Artificer.
Oh well, that's a new archetype. New archetype alert. When I saw the Grixis Urza as like just the name of a deck archetype in the top 8 of Grand Prix Dallas, I was like, oh, is the Urzatron now have a lot of colors? No, they just meant Urza.
Yeah. Yeah, Urza has blown up. I mean, Urza decks, they're taking a lot of forms, but yeah, Urza's definitely made a mark already and established a macro archetype that has several variations at the moment. Justin Porteous's Grixis Urza deck, and it's only loosely Grixis Urza, by the way. The Grixis component, if there is any, is that you use your black mana to cast Thopter Foundry and activate Nile Spellbomb, or hardcast Leyline of the Void out of the sideboard on the backup plan. And I guess you got Tezzeret in the sideboard too.
He's
But
got a snow-covered swamp. I think that they're gonna lean it away from the Izzet. So,
definitely. Not everybody plays this Grixis-y, by the way.
so
But yeah.
So this deck has got a lot of artificers, right? It's got Urza Lord High Artificer at 2 UU. It's got Psy Master Thopterist at the 3 at 2 and U. And it's got Goblin Engineer as its 2 drop.
Goblin Engineer is actually another one that's been all over the place, only appearing in just lots of different decks, not just these Urza decks. And we should get to some of those after, a little bit later, but Goblin Engineer in this deck is actually awesome. It does a Stoneforge Mystic impression. You see, not only can you go get whatever you want to be able to potentially get back with your Goblin Engineer, it's a loop. The main thing you do, though, is you Goblin Engineer and you go get your Sword of the Meek.
So
because then it's right where you want it.
Right?
Right. Yeah, that's right where you want it. And so you can do things like go turn 1, Arkham's Astrolab. Turn 2, Goblin Engineer, go get Sword of the Meek. Turn 3, you can sacrifice your Arkham's Astrolab if you want, but you get to just play the Thopter Foundry out of your hand, and you can kind of just start going. You can just sacrifice. You've got the Goblin Engineer to potentially get back the Thopter Foundry if you need, but you can actually just start going Thopter Sword right there. But you can actually just loop plenty of things like Ichor Wellspring. Ichor Wellspring is an awesome card to Goblin Engineer over and over again. And obviously Arkham's Astrolab is an extra card every time.
So if you just draw a Thopter Foundry and a Goblin Engineer in your opening hand, God forbid you have a Mox Opal, you can you just kind of have it's like a soft combo on turn 2, turn 3, right? You haven't won yet, but
that's a hell of a plan.
Opponent who's playing fair is not going to like this situation, right?
No, not at all. And this deck's actually capable of exploding, from not very much going on to infinite. You see, when you have Urza, Lord High Artificer, you can actually just play Urza, which is not that hard to do on turn 3, incidentally, if you just have a Mind Stone or a Mox Opal. So, depending on what your board looks like, you could just play Urza and immediately tap your Thopter Foundry or your Sword of the Meek and start comboing off. Because each time you can tap the Thopter to get a mana, and you can tap the Sword of the Meek that's attached to it to get a mana. And so each time you net a mana, because then you sacrifice the Sword of the Meek, make another Thopter, which the Sword of the Meek comes back, so you actually get to gain, or you actually get a boundless amount of mana and a boundless number of Thopters, almost half of which can be untapped, and then you actually get a boundless amount of life from your Thopter Foundry, and because you have Urza, you can actually temporal aperture your deck at as many times as you want.
Once you have that enormous mana engine,
right? So basically, Urza plus Thopter Sword. I mean, Thopter Sword's a great combo anyway, but Urza makes the Thopter Sword combo win on the spot. And it actually nets you mana. So if you just drop Urza, you just do the whole thing immediately. You don't even have to wait at all. You just do it.
So, not for nothing, but because Goblin Engineer puts artifacts into the graveyard, and because the Sword of the Meek Thopter Foundry combo is kind of graveyard reliant, even though this is not a Hogak deck, this is yet another deck which is potentially vulnerable to Leyline of the Void or other graveyard hate, yeah?
Totally. And this is actually one of the, we're going to see some other spots as well, but this is a great example, and there's a few others because the number of graveyard decks in this format is no joke. It's not just the Hogak stuff. There is a card I wanted to point out, though, from the sideboard that I don't know how to process this, if there's any chance that I should be considering this instead of Lightning Axe and Hogak, which is Magmatic Sinkhole. 5 in a red, instant delve, deal 5 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So I think Lightning Axe is better for Hogak. But there are a lot of planeswalkers floating around. And like, I mean, I don't think you want to be. I don't think you can afford to exile 5 cards out of your Hogak's graveyard because of how much you just need to feed Hogak. But it's an interesting card. Like, I think it's better than it might appear.
This card looks sweet to me.
Then maybe it's exactly as good as it appears.
This is like the Gurmag Angler of lightning bolts, right? Like,
kind of the murderous cut, but whatever.
Sure, sure.
I think there's just such a difference between proactive and reactive. It's like the difference between rewind and time spiral, you know? Or Cloud of Fairies, or whatever.
Only one of those 3 cards put Shaheen Sarani on the map, and it weren't Time Spiral, and it weren't Cloud of Fairies.
What do you think of Dead of Winter in the sideboard?
It's sweet, right? So you have snow permanents aplenty in this deck, right? So there's 6 snow-covered islands, a snow-covered mountain, a snow-covered swamp, but then you've also got these Arkham's Astrolabes, right?
And 7 fetches.
Yeah, so I mean, I think this card is probably better than a one of, right? So your expectation for a 3 casting cost sorcery in Modern is about 3, right? The red ones deal 3, and the black ones typically do 2. But this is like minus, not just damage. I think like you're likely to do north of 2, 3, like when you're casting this, which is exactly where you want to be. And I mean, minus is just so much better than damage. I don't know. It seems great.
Yeah, I think it seems pretty great too. I don't think it's like crazy revolutionary or anything, but I think it's like the best option available. Yeah.
I mean, it also
it's better than Radiant Flames, even though you have access to red.
It's funny because this is like a Radiant Flames-ish card, if you think about it, right? Like, if you've got 3 basics in play, all the basics in this deck are snow, right? So, yes, this is way better than Radiant Flames, because, like, if you've got, like, maybe just, like, a swamp and 2 islands or something, this would be more effective than a Radiant Flames anyway.
Yeah, plus, you can do 4.
Yeah, you do more than 4. You could do, like, 11.
Yeah. So, it's hard to do 11 in this deck, but you can do 10.
Why can't you do 11?
Because you don't have 11 snow permanents.
Yeah, you
do.
You
have 10.
You have Island, Astrolabe is 10, and then Mountain and Swamp is 12.
There's 6 islands, right?
Yeah.
And then Mountain and Swamp, that's 8.
And 4 Astrolabes.
Wow.
You do 12. I was conservative on 11.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I'll give you that.
That's not going to come up real commonly.
So, what do you think of this deck, man?
I think that this deck is probably a work of genius. And I'm just thinking, like, is this... I don't know how fast this deck is, but I feel like in the world of Hogak, is this a legitimately as good? Or, like, so clearly, you know, Justin Portis did great with this deck. I think, like, you are just drawing a line in the sand when you perform with a deck like this. First time out of the gate, it's a brand new archetype. Not only is it a brand new archetype, but this is the kind of deck that you make a mark with, right? This deck is full of one-ofs. It's full of tutor capability with cards like Whir of Invention. This is the kind of deck that, you know, if you're in a problem situation, you can find your way out. You know, when you're playing on camera, you just look like a genius when you're getting out of the tough spots. But I'm just not sure if Hogak is faster, I think is the question.
Well, I see. I don't know. So at this point, the Urza deck is everywhere. Like, it finished second in the Team Open and in the leagues. It was one of the more popular decks. And there's variation between them. But I think it's important to consider sort of the range of what sort of things people are doing in these decks. Because, like, for instance, industry standard at this point is to play Serum Visions. And we don't see any Serum Visions in Justin's list. And I'm not sure, you know, Serum Vision seems decent to me. Most of the other decks, like, for instance, Brian Koval's second place deck, Koval's list has 4 Serum Visions to help smooth out the draws. He's got 1 Tormod's Crypt main deck as an obviously a bullet you can go get with the Goblin Engineer and then get it back. And the ability to Goblin Engineer back a Tormod's Crypt every turn is pretty potent.
That's just
And
way better than the Grafdigger's Cage.
well, he's got one of each.
No, I'm just saying Porches
And
has got a Grafdigger's Cage at least.
oh yeah, I'm saying Koval's got one of each.
Fair enough.
And
fair
so I think the Grafdigger's Cage is like also important because I think you got to be able to stop people who play Neoform. And then, or some of the Eldamari's Call decks that set up the various Vizier of Remedies combos. And then Koval also plays a Scrap Trawler instead of any Psi action. He's got a fourth Engineer and a Scrap Trawler instead of those two Psis.
Well, he's got some size in the sideboard. I think that you have to have some Psi access. I actually would lean towards the Porches version of having Psi in the main deck. If you think folks are going to be playing main deck ley lines, or these decks themselves have got cards like Tormod's Crypt to fight graveyards. I feel like Psi is just one of the best options, right? Like you can do a tremendous amount of messing up your opponent without actually leaning on the graveyard if you have Psi. I think that Koval's deck is not dead to a ley line, but it's clearly in a worse situation, right?
Yeah. I wonder if you want Gurper Aether Grid main deck. The Nobody who finished 6th in the challenge played one Gurper Aether Grid and one. He also had one Psi, but one Gurper Aether Grid as the other backup victory condition. And notably, he wasn't playing black. I mean, he's playing Dead of Winter, but he wasn't playing just Grixis, I should say. He also had access to white in the form of sideboarded Deputy of Detention and Teferi Time Raveler.
Deputy of Detention?
Yeah.
That's wild. I mean,
how wild is that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it clears out a lot of zombies, though. I mean, like...
And then quite a bit of spice over here in this 4-color list. 2 copies of Dead of Winter, as you noted, but 3 copies of Battle at the Bridge.
I mean...
What do you think?
Like... I saw Battle of the Bridge on camera watching... I was actually flipping between the events on Saturday afternoon, so I actually don't remember which event it was in. But man, that Battle of the Bridge was just rotting in that player's hand. Like it did not get cast, and he was killed by a Phoenix.
Yeah, that's a tough way to do it. There's a different Goblin Engineer deck that kind of might be worth working with a little bit. I think it's going to take a little bit of investigating, but like Melton's 5-0 list from the Modern Challenge, it's Rakdos Prison. So 4 Goblin Engineers, and this is how do we even describe this archetype? So the discard component is 4 Inquisition of Kozilek, 4 Collective Brutality, and then with also 4 Liliana the Veil to keep piling on. But then the interaction, the deck's got 4 main deck Nile spell bombs, and then 3 Ensnaring Bridge, 2 Damnation, no spot removal, 2 Pithing Needles, and Karn the Great Creator, which is basically try to do everything, But Goblin Engineer in this deck is really interesting because this is somebody willing to play Goblin Engineer despite the fact that the only artifacts in his deck are Ensnaring Bridge, Nile Spellbomb, Pithing Needle, and Arkham's Astroab.
Not just that, he's playing 4
Goblin Engineers. And you know what you go get? Ensnaring Bridge or Nile Spellbomb. But one of the things that's funny is the Goblin Engineer can just cycle Spellbombs over and over again as a card draw engine. Because you get to draw the card even if the Nile Spellbomb goes to the graveyard for a different reason than the graveyard hitting ability.
So I think that's not exactly fair just because Karn the Great Creator does give you access to a ton of additional artifacts out of your sideboard that you can kind of loop with, right? Play around with, even if the engineer is only searching for these 13 artifacts in game one.
Yeah. Notably, though, you can't, even if you have Mycosynth Lattice in play, you don't get to Goblin Engineer for things that are not normally artifacts.
So it's no Celestial Dawn.
Yeah, it's like all cards that aren't on the battlefield, spells and permanents are colorless. All permanents are artifacts in addition to their other types, but they're not permanents until they're... But I don't know.
So what would you even call this deck, Patrick? What is this, like Rakdos supervillains?
I mean, it is a lock deck. When you're playing in, it reminds me of smallpox decks without smallpox.
Yeah, but it's not symmetrical at all, right? I mean, I guess Liliana the Veil is kind of symmetrical.
And Ensnaring Bridge.
This deck doesn't attack.
So, like, you're trying to just lock them out, right? Like, you try to discard them, and then you set up a lock. You either lock them out with Ensnaring Bridge, or you lock them out with Karn the Great Creator. So it's definitely a lock deck. The spiciest number, without question, though, one Snare Thopter. Dude, you Karn the Great Creator for Snare Thopter? Eh?
So Snare Thopter, I got to read this one. So this is a forecasting cost 3/2 artifact creature Thopter. It has haste, flying and haste, and that's it. So this is Melton's colorless Rakdos Bloodbraid Elf, no Cascade.
Dude, this is it's like a Slash Panther that doesn't even do 2 damage to you, and it flies instead of being stuck with that 4th point of strength, like.
Wow. There's no way I would have rated this card as constructed playable. Would you?
That's an exotic one.
Summon this guy? I mean, you have to get them down to 3 before this is a good thing to pull, right?
Nah, dude, you hit Jace the Mind Sculptor with this bad boy.
Oh. I can't believe we can't do better. I guess it has haste.
Man, it is weird to think that we could not do better, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I assume Melton perused the Gatherer and set it to artifacts before selecting this card, but this is the spiciest.
Don't you just want to lodestone golem people? I guess once you have Karn the Great Creator, it's probably redundant, but...
I mean, like, what do you ever really want to do if you're just going to get, like, an unchecked Karn the Great Creator and then just drop the Mycosynth Lattice?
Well, you don't always have the mana for the Mycosynth Lattice. When you've got 6, that's not the problem.
So, this deck, I guess it's, like, medium okay at playing fair, right? It's got, like, Collective Brutality and Damnation for main deck defense, and that's it. I mean, you're really relying pretty hard on Ensnaring Bridge and these 3 Castigos Lilianas.
Yeah, Ensnaring Bridge particularly. So, kind of interesting seeing more Goblin Engineer. But, dude, here's a new archetype. Mardu Death Shadow. So one of the players from the Team Open, one of the winners, Jeremy Bertorioni, played an update to Death Shadow that now incorporates white because of the power of the Ranger Captain of Eos. Like Ranger Captain of Eos being, and that's the 1 white 3/3 that when it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost 1 or less, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library. And then he also has Sacrifice Ranger Captain of Eos. Your opponents can't cast non-creature spells this turn. So Ranger of Eos was already a sometimes sideboard plan for Death Shadow decks. Ranger Captain of Eos coming down a turn earlier is well worth the difference. Like, the difference between a 3-drop and a 4-drop is all the difference in the world. And the The Ranger of Eos to go get a second Death Shadow is sometimes redundant. And then the fact that Ranger Captain of Eos gives you like another meaningful form of interaction against combo decks, or even just like sometimes you turn off Supreme Verdict or Damnation during their turn because all you need is one more turn.
Sure. Not for nothing, you can get Giver of Runes with Ranger Captain of Eos also, right? So there's a one
Yep.
of Giver of Runes in the main deck.
And that's one's very important because you don't always have 13 life or less. It's good to be able to go get something that you can just play.
So this deck is this bears some thought. So Dreadhorde Arcanist is another new
That's
card.
a new twist. Oh yeah.
So this isn't even from one of the sets we were talking about. So Dreadhorde Arcanist, this is exactly how we talked about it potentially getting played in Modern, though, right? So one of the early scouts to this card was to play it like with a bunch of lightning bolts and stuff, but we were talking about, no, man, you want to be flipping back Thoughtseize and Inquisition.
Well, no. You want to be flipping back Unearth. You see, you Dreadhorde Arcanist, and then you play the Unearth out of your graveyard and get back to the Ranger Captain of Eos, and then on your opponent's turn you abeyance them again. And then on your turn, you attack with the Dreadhorde Arcanist, you get back Unearth, you unearth the Ranger Captain of Eos, and then you abeyance them again.
Oh. I mean,
so you can actually just lock them out if they are a combo deck.
This is a spicy anti-combo control deck, right?
Yeah.
It's got like 7 main deck discard, probably more disruption in the sideboard, right?
Plus two surgicals and 2 Nile spellbombs. When you get to look at so many cards, like when you have 3 Inquisition of Kozilek and 4 Thoughtseize and 4 Mishra's Bauble to sneak a peek at the top of their deck, you have so many ways to know what's in their hands so that you can time a surgical to be another discard spell.
So, I mean, Jeremy is he is so far on the next level. How about Yixlid Jailer? Right?
Times 4. Because when they board in Nature's Claim, yeah.
So my favorite thing about Yixlid Jailer is that cards in graveyards lose all abilities. That includes like Flashback, Dredge, everything. So folks who have got like 1 Dark Blast, they had best draw that Dark Blast. Because if it's in the graveyard, they can't do their normal Dark Blast cheaties to kill the Yixlid Jailer. Because it loses all abilities.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about Yixlid Jailer versus other options? Is this legit?
I'll have to try it. I do love it for this past weekend insofar as it definitely dodges a lot of the hate people were a lot of the sideboard plans that the Hogak decks were planning on.
So just say no to Wispmare. Just say no to Nature's Claim. I mean,
I think Wispmare's time. I think it might actually not be Wispmare's time right now because it's too many people are playing too big of a diversity. If you know that people are playing the Rest in Peace and Leyline, the Wispmare is definitely it's amazing. But there's just so many people who are doing things like playing Tormod's Crypt or Grafdigger's Cage or in this case Yixlid Jailer. There's just a big variety of different forms of hate that people are coming with.
So this deck is just like full of good. I mean, it's full of a combination of like nonsense to ruin people's deck and then just good cards also, right? So like Lingering Souls 4X in the sideboard, I kind of love it.
Dude, what do you think of the fact that this is actually just an Orzhov deck? The only red cards are 2 Faithless Looting and those 3 Dreadhorde Arcanist. There's not even lightning bolts. This is an Orzhov deck that just splashes Dreadhorde Arcanist.
I don't know. I have to wrap my head around this. I think I have to play around with it to figure that out. That seems too cool. And I don't know. 2 Faithless Looting doesn't seem like the right number to me. But
What, you want more or less?
I think I would want more.
Well, Death Shadow's historically not played Faithless Looting, and if they have, they've played 1.
Yeah, but this isn't a blue deck. Death Shadow has so Death Shadow's either been green manipulation for cards like Traverse the Uvelin Wald, or blue for cards like Serum Visions and the other 1 casting cost blue cantrips, right? So we're not in either of those places. we got to go exploring. We got to find the path, and that path is has got Grim Lavamancer on it.
Mm.
So Grim Lavamancer does not lose the ability to grind graveyard cards for 2 damage, right? With a Yixo Jailer in play, because the Lavamancer is in play, right? He's just chewing on the graveyard. He's not actually.
Yeah, you can still delve and everything like that. What you can't do is Faithless Looting or Lingering Souls in this deck,
So Celestial Purge is a nice solid little one of in the sideboard.
I like it.
That guy Hayaz Hogak pretty good for perms.
Well, it's actually extra important. It's extra important against Phoenix decks now. You see, it's not just that you can Celestial Purge their Arclight Phoenix. That could be nice tactically, I guess, right? But actually, the Phoenix decks have really evolved. They already had Pyromancer's Ascension, and now they've picked up Aria of Flame. Aria of Flame is that 2-red enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent gains 10 life, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a verse counter on Aria of Flame and deal damage equal to the number of verse counters on it to target player or planeswalker.
So it's super exciting if you can just gain 10 life and then destroy the Aria of Flame before they exploit it, right?
What?
Right? Like...
Oh, you're saying like if you're against it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
with Celestial Purge,
yeah,
right.
Like you cast the Aria of Flame, I cast the Celestial Purge.
Well, you got to be careful because Aria of Flame kills your Death Shadows.
Because I gain 10 life.
Right. You got to be careful. Aria of Flame is actually a very, very powerful terminate against Death Shadows. Like it Plague Winds the Death Shadows. And then what's more, Aria of Flame does not take much to kill somebody with an Aria of Flame. Even if they're set aside all the Death Shadow shenanigans, you go 1, 2, 3, 4. The first 4 sorceries and instants you play pay for the Aria of Flame's 10 life if they can't destroy it, of course, But then after that, you do 5 and then 6 and then 7. So like you actually can kill somebody from 20 pretty easily. All you need is a single lightning bolt. And, 6 other cards. But the point being that because Aria Flame is a solid plan in the first place, and they can just main deck it, and it's just around, and it's just an option they're going to have in addition to their Phoenixes and Pyromancer's Ascensions, and then the fact that it's so good against your Death Shadows, I think Celestial Purge is a real smart addition here.
So I'm looking at Alex Bastecki's version of Is It Phoenix? Alex was one of the folks who finished second in the team open. So Alex has got Aria of Flame and a bunch of other new cards in this Phoenix deck. I was actually enchanted by watching some coverage over the weekend, the number of folks who were playing Lava Dart. So Lava Dart seems like a low power burn spell to me, certainly in the Phoenix deck, but I can see where people are embracing it. Like Lava Dart is basically two triggers on the Aria, right? And relatively low cost. You're just sacrificing a land.
Yeah, I mean, this deck is really trying to maximize the Aria Flame. And in fact, Alex's list doesn't even play the Pyromancer's Ascension. He's just playing Aria Flames, 3 of them. The 4 Manamorphose are a free spell for you. Surgical Extraction, a free spell for you. Lava Dart, a free spell for you. And lots of these being 2, replacing themselves. And then finally, Finale of Promise. Finale of Promise is actually 3 spells.
Yeah, this deck is going to have very little problem getting a lot of card advantage for that Finale of Promise. And, hopefully triggering Arclight Phoenix in one move.
Yep. So, definitely in for the Celestial Purge.
So what I was kind of hinting at when I was saying that is maybe white decks should play lots of Celestial Purges, like not just one. Or do you think that's too many?
You got to be careful. you don't want to be just flooded with these reactive spells because even like when you Celestial Purge the stuff, it's hard to. You're not always going to be getting the best of it. Like it's like Doom Blades, you know. And you can do it. It's just you get diminishing returns if you just get stuck with too many reactive cards. But I mean, you could play more if you've got room for it. It's not like the second one is like bad or something, you know. It's just you only have so many sideboard spots, and white sideboard cards are particularly valuable.
Yeah, I got you. Like when I'm paying 2 mana to cast an instant that blows up one of my opponent's permanents, I like to deal 3 damage at the same time. So it's just a thing I like to do.
Sure. Austin Bursovic, winning the Grand Prix with blue-white control, actually played 2 copies of Celestial Purge in his sideboard. This blue-white control list was fairly straightforward. You know, definitely the Planeswalker heavy version with 3 Narset, 2 Teferi Time Raveler, 2 Jace the Mind Sculptor, 1 Teferi Hero of Dominaria. The biggest twist here, you know, a lot of normal stuff like 4 Cryptic Commands, 4 Ops, 4 Path to Exile, some Surgicals, Oust, Supreme Verdict, Timely Reinforcements throughout the Godspell Snare, Logic Knot, Mana Lake, you know, doing the whole one of counterspell thing. But the twist here is 2 Force of Negations main deck. A little different than we normally see. And then obviously for Rest in Peace.
Only because this is like one of the first big tournaments where it was legal, right?
Yep, true.
Might be the case, you know, 6 months from now that, you know, Azorius control decks just play a bunch of these. I don't know.
That's true.
He's got 3 after board. I mean, I can imagine. I think 4 in the main deck is probably indicative of either too many or a very, very stilted metagame, but I can imagine it happening. I think like this is a very good card.
So the use of 1 Dovin's Veto. I wonder, most people in this deck have been playing Dovin's Veto main deck, but we don't see any here.
Yeah, I mean,
where are you at on that?
He's just playing Force of Negation instead. Like, Force of Negation is a very Dovin's Veto card, right? Like, they can counter largely the same kind of things. And I understand that the cards are different, right? Like, they have different upsides and different casting costs, but their kind of function in the mid-game is the same.
Sure. What did you think of Force of Despair showing up? So, for instance, there's a Urza of Tokens list, Panache 010 in the league that played 1/1 Force of Despair in Urza of Tokens. Force of Despair being the destroy all creatures that enter the battlefield this turn, and if it's not your turn, you can exile a black card rather than paying its cost. So it's quite good against the Hogak decks. It's not insane, but it buys you time, which is what you really need, particularly if you're trying to rely on stuff like Kaya's Guile or Nile Spellbomb. But Force of Despair is also good against Neoform. It's good against Living End. It's good against... sometimes you just kill a couple creatures. They just play 2 creatures on the second turn, and you just kill them both.
Yeah, I actually... Before we jump over there, do you mind if we talk a little bit more about Austin's deck? Sorry.
No, please do. No. Austin's the champion. There's a lot to like.
So, look... This deck, which is like the epitome of a reactive deck, at least for Modern right now, right? So I understand
it's fairly reactive. I mean, it does have a lot of planeswalkers.
Yeah, like it's got 8 planeswalkers, but like relative to these decks that are just spitting out 2/1 creatures and tons of tokens and so on, this is a very reactive deck. But it's obviously super biased, right? So he's got 2 copies of Surgical Extraction main deck, and then in a sideboard that is largely one-ofs, right? Almost everything is one-ofs except for those Celestial Purges, which are coming in anyway. There are 4 Rest in Peace. So I think that the projected dominance of the Hogak deck actually gave the kind of clarity necessary to put the correct answers in his sideboard, and kind of also gave Austin some extra oomph with regards to the efficacy of those sideboard cards, because Rest in Peace and Celestial Purge are both outstanding cards against Izzet Phoenix as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So and also, would you bring in Baneslayer Angel against Izzet Phoenix? That seems kind of good to me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you do got to be careful because obviously they have that magmatic sinkhole now. But if in particular when you are on a 4 rest in peace plan, making it harder for them to delve.
Yeah. I don't think the
So
sinkhole is great against the Baneslayer Angels in this deck. Among other things, if you've got like a loose sinkhole, aren't you likely going to be throwing it at one of the many planeswalkers that are going to show up probably before the one Baneslayer Angel?
well, it depends. I mean, whatever they draw. I mean, the fact that he kills Teferi for 1 mana, big Teferi.
So, I never thought I'd see the day, but Narset Parter of Veils is the most populous of the planeswalkers in Austin's list. And this card at 3 is really just highly limiting people's ability to exploit both Teferi Time Raveler and Jason Mind Sculptor. And to some degree, Teferi Hero of Dominaria.
Well, and Serum Visions and, Faithless Looting too, Manamorphose, so those type of cards.
So powerful in Modern.
Yeah.
All right. So, I just wanted to note that how heavily biased Austin's deck was. But Force of Despair. Okay. So, the context of this deck is like, this is also like a supervillain's deck, right? It's got 1 creature, which is awesome because the 1 creature is a Nether Spirit.
That's a classic 1 creature to have.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you would just splurge and play 2, right? Yeah, I'm gonna draw them both, but like
this deck makes a lot of tokens though. 2 Bitter Blossom, 4 Lingering Souls, 2 Kaya's Guile, a Gideon ally of Zendikar, Sarah the Benevolent. You're making some tokens.
Yeah, but there's only 1 Nether Spirit's the only piece of cardboard, so
yeah,
it's not a lot of competition from that perspective in game 1. So yeah, I think this deck might be awesome.
Dude, Sarah the Benevolent, we talked about that. A lot of doubters out there. But the ability to drop Sarah the Benevolent and either Anthem all your Lingering Souls and Bitter Blossom and Kaya's Guile tokens, or go the other way and give yourself a 4/4, it's just a big game. Plus, I mean, it's not nothing. If you get this emblem, you can beat a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm surprised about is this deck's got like 3 Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. I mean, I don't have any experience playing Silent Clearing.
Flagstones.
Well, yeah, the Flagstones are they're not even industry standard. That's just a good card. But
I just meant that Urborg, you need all these Urborgs when you've got the Flagstones.
Yeah, the thing that I'm curious about is here's this deck with 2 Bitter Blossoms and 4 Lingering Souls. I mean, would you not want to play the White Hideaway land in this deck? Is it too tough because it's a Smallpox deck?
I don't know. It's interesting. I think it's hard to do it because you got to, on turn 1, you got to play Thoughtseizer Inquisition.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, maybe you're right. I think like the White Hideaway land would be awesome in this deck because there's so many. There's
some good hits.
Yeah,
there's a lot of good hits.
Not even that you're slamming an Emrakul, but like any of these mid-game planeswalkers would be very happy to flip out there, right?
I think that's a really cool idea. I would try that.
Yeah, I would be in for this deck. I think this deck is pretty cool. I don't.
Dude,
know.
I love the Ashiok Dream Renders in sideboard too. It's more graveyard hate.
Oh my god, I didn't even look at the graveyard yet. So this deck's got 4 Rest in Peace, 2 Ashiok. I mean,
a Nile Spellbound main deck, 2 Kaya's Guile main deck. Because remember, Kaya's Guile, this is that 4-way choose 2. Like Cryptic Command or whatever. Yeah. So Kaya's Guile, 1 white black, choose 2. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. Exile all cards from each opponent's graveyard. Create a 1/1 white and black spirit token with flying. You gain 4 life. And what's more, you can entwine it so that for 6 mana, you get all 4 options.
So, yeah, at the white, black, blue instant slot, Kaya's Guile is not alone. it's also anguished unmaking. I am shocked that this card is seeing modern play.
Why? This card looks great. I don't know. I guess I was a buyer of this card when we talked about it on the show before for modern, but I don't know. Isn't just each opponent sacrifices a creature and exile their graveyard? Like, exile their graveyard's a great option, right? And you gain 4 life.
Yeah.
And if you just have a 1/1 flyer that makes them sacrifice a creature that you can a 1/1 flying flash, they sacrifice a creature. That's so good.
Yeah, I like this deck a lot. Like,
and the flyer token is on message, with those with that Sarah the Benevolent.
So the only thing that I would think about on this deck is maybe diversifying the planeswalkers a little bit. Like, is 2 Sorin Solemn Visitor right? Like, I had almost think like maybe 2 of the new forecasting costs. I mean, 1 of the new forecasting cost Sorin, and then 1 of the old forecasting cost Sorin.
I could see playing a mix of 1 in each.
You can get them both in play.
I can tell you the one thing I'm doing is playing 4 Liliana the Veil, though. You're not talking in this deck. You're not talking me off of 4 Liliana the Veils.
100% agree. This deck's got Lingering Souls and Smallpox.
Right.
Kaya is actually great in this format, isn't she?
Oh yeah, Kaya's popular and good. I could see playing a Kaya in this deck.
So maybe I'm a lunatic, but I feel like
One thing that's tough about Kaya though is, go ahead.
I would just consider playing Karn the Creator in this deck.
Well, no, so yeah, that uses a lot of space. Here's why I think you might be into Kaya, dude. Kaya plus Rest in Peace.
Just to kill people to death?
Kill them all the way to death.
I don't hate it.
What do you think of Generous Gift in the sideboard? The new white, being able to, instead of giving him an elephant, give him an elephant.
It certainly solves a lot of different problems, right? Like, this deck, I think, is probably like in a situation where it has so many different kinds of reactive stuff. It just wants to have a catch-all. I guess the question is how much they care about giving the opponent a 3/3 elephant. But if you're playing with a Smallpox deck, probably doesn't care very much at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll frequently be able to just clean up the leftovers, whether it's Liliana or Smallpox. But the big part of it here is just being able to go after somebody's Urza's Tower while also having another answer to Ugin or Karn.
Oh, man. That is... I'm just thinking, like, it's so powerful, right? Like, you can instant speed Stone Rain somebody's Urza's land and then untap and Smallpox. Like, that would mess them up on the manas.
Right, and this is definitely one of those decks that the discard spells can, be really focused on hitting Expedition Map and Sylvan Scrying type of cards. What do you think of Bantu's Last Reckoning? Man, this one's kind of an eyebrow raiser.
Yeah, I'm not into it. So basically, you're getting back 1 mana south of Damnation, right? But in return, you're giving up a lot for that 1 mana. I don't know. Look, this deck is clearly willing to pay 4, right? It's got Sarah the Benevolent and Sorin Solemn Visitor at 4. Why not just pay 4?
I don't know.
I mean,
looks a little. I don't know. Not my jam necessarily to be Bantu's Last Reckoning here, but maybe it's worth it.
Yeah, I don't think I can. I don't think I can get behind that one. There's a lot of things that I like about this strategy. But that's not one of them. But a lot of this deck is so cool and powerful. I just want to test that white hideaway land. But other than that,
yeah, this deck's definitely one of my favorites of the weekend. There's a different. So there's a bunch of these white-black decks, but there's a version that's actually really in on the red as well. A very different kind of Mardu deck. Timu playing Yawgmoth Thran Physician with Seasoned Pyromancer and Young Pyromancer helping out on the token front. Did you see this one? I mean, this is a piece of work.
I had not seen that one yet.
Yeah,
So
so it's a white-black tokens deck, but instead of that Smallpox package, we're seeing Seasoned Pyromancer and Young Pyromancer really contribute to the tokens thing, with Yawgmoth Thran Physician for going over the top. And this is definitely a lot more of a Rakdos deck. The only white cards are Lingering Souls and my personal favorite, Smiting Helix.
Smiting Helix.
Smiting Helix is amazing. I think people should be playing this card so much more. Now, it's weird not having Smallpox, because Smallpox and Smiting Helix is so great of a combination. I think Smiting Helix is amazing. The card looks so good to me.
So Smiting Helix is just like everything I've ever had nightmares about, right?
Yeah, but you could use this.
Yeah. Right, so it's a Lightning Helix on the front end and a Lightning Helix for Lightning Helix's cost on the back end.
Sorcery speed, but yeah.
I don't care.
Dude, if you discard this to Faithless Looting, you just have an extra Lightning Helix.
Yeah. This
card is a phenomenal card to discard to Seasoned Pyromancer, too.
Yes. A million% agree this card is awesome.
And if the game stretches, it's not like draining your opponent for 6 is a bad thing.
No, absolutely not. I mean,
dude, you have this with Collective Brutality?
That is a heck of a combo.
Yeah. Dude, I think Smiting Helix is for real, for real.
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement. But the only thing I'd see here is this deck is not respecting Hogak as much game one. It's all of its Hogak hates in the sideboard.
Yeah, this is definitely a classic example of just doesn't think it's worth trying. Just scoop game one. It's too hard to fight him. You're just so completely beat at a strategic level. And then in the sideboard, he's got 4 Leyline of the Voids, 2 Nile Spell Bombs, and a Surgical.
Would you bring Plague Engineer in?
Against Hogak?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think it's too slow.
You don't think
Maybe you would.
No,
I don't know. No, I think naming Zombie is dope. No, I would bring in Plague Engineer. I think naming Zombie is dope. I think you're right. I'd bring in Plague Engineer.
Yeah, so, I mean, talk to me about Yawgmoth Thran Physician. I understand the Pyromancer twins. Those guys, we're in agreement. But Yawgmoth Thran Physician, I feel like... I guess his activation cost is so cheap. Is that the thing that makes it exciting?
Yeah, you're talking about the pay 1 life and sack another creature? Yeah. And remember, you don't have to put a -1/-1 counter on something. It's up to 1. But you just, when you have Yawgmoth in play, you can just sack tokens and pay a life to draw cards. So when you have Seasoned Pyromancer and Young Pyromancer and Lingering Souls, Yawgmoth will draw you a lot of cards. And that's to say nothing of if you ever get into a situation where you're facing one of these, whether it's a Hardened Scales deck or a Humans deck or a Merfolk deck, any of these decks that just have creatures, the white aggro, anything. Those -1/-1 counters are incredible. You can just rip apart somebody else's board. And remember, you can do this at instant speed at will for 0 mana. And as if that wasn't enough, you can pay black, and discard a card, which is on message anyway for this Smiting Helix Lingering Souls deck. You can pay, or Seasoned Pyromancer for that matter. But you can Yawgmoth and discard a card to proliferate, which, you know, if you put 1 counter on everything, turning it into 2 counters on everything. And that's not even counting the fact that Seasoned Pyromancer or Young Pyromancer, you can get an extra elemental while also getting an extra Lingering Souls Spirit. You know, just get one of each.
Yeah, the proliferation is a little bit subtle in this deck because, you know, there's no planeswalkers or anything. So you're actually typically proliferating the -1/-1 counters that are being generated by Thran himself, right?
Yep.
Yeah, what do you think about Camball Console of Allocation? Right, like...
I don't know. I mean, it's. I guess like I I could imagine it, but it wouldn't be my first, second, or third choice to try.
Do you think it's too slow or too vulnerable or
Too
both?
slow. I think it's just a little slow. And it's weird because there's some people that it's not too slow against, but it's too vulnerable against them, right? Like if you're playing its control, it's kind of vulnerable, and if you're playing its combo, it's kind of slow.
It's like weirdly vulnerable against like burn, right? Like this is a card that's like, oh, I can gain life and stuff, but it's just like
Yeah,
gates
but
off
I'm
and it's
not
like
too
gonna
worried about
zing
that.
right.
Once you have four smiting helix in your deck, not to mention collective brutality. Dude, can you just imagine playing against somebody who has four smiting helix and four lightning helix?
I mean, I was actually imagining making a deck with four collective brutality, four smiting helix, and four lightning helix, and never losing to myself in the future. Like that would be hell heaven on earth for slash against the red deck.
What do you think of four seasoned pyromancer, but only three lingering souls?
I think that we may have initially underestimated Seasoned Pyromancer. That Jund deck that you brought up way at the top of the cast this week had more Seasoned Pyromancers than Bloodbraid Elves.
Yep. Seasoned pyromancer. I don't know. I thought it looked great. Like the ability to discard two cards and then draw two cards, so you're getting some selection, and then you're also getting, you're getting a lingering soul's worth up front. But then you actually can exile them from your graveyard and get two more on the backside.
Like maybe you're supposed to play like a lot of more like Kolaghan's commands and maybe more flashbacks, right? Like
Well, he's got Unearth. Unearth is a really efficient way to get back your seasoned pyromancer.
yes, that
Like,
is true.
like for instance, imagine you just on turn 4 you drop a seasoned pyromancer, and one of the two cards you discard is another seasoned pyromancer, and then you unearth it.
Um, yeah, that's some
Or you go
nonsense.
turn 1 faithless looting, turn 2, or maybe you even just play a discard spell on turn 1. But on turn 2, you faithless looting away a seasoned pyromancer and then unearth it. Pretty strong.
Yeah, this is like a wild new world. It's crazy, like that. None of these decks existed 3 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's just. And dude, we're only scratching the surface. Did you see the lousy Zoot with goblins?
Another deck that I did not see.
Dude, so munitions expert definitely having an impact. And then Goblin Matron. And what's more, it's not just Goblin Matron and Sling Gang Lieutenant and Munitions Expert. Like, there's a lot to like here, but remember, this list is already putting up big finishes, and Goblin Ringleader isn't even legal yet.
So this is a very different Goblin deck than we've seen. Like most Goblin decks are like mono red, right? Unless they're doing black for like reanimation type stuff. This is like leaning into black goblins as well as red goblins.
Yeah, I think that the tipping point is just how incredible of a dimension Munitions Expert brings to the table. This is the 1/1 flash. When it enters the battlefield, you may have it deal damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the number of goblins you control. Having one Tarfire and then some Munitions Experts for when you actually have enough mana, it makes these. Obviously, you have the Goblin Matrons for tutoring up goblins, but you also have Bogart Harbinger. I
Uh,
mean, this deck has so many tutor targets, though.
so do you think? So talk to me about Kiki Jiki in this deck. Is this just for value?
Yeah, just take over the game. It's the biggest. It's the goblin you can get that's the biggest. You start. I mean, you have Siege Gang Commander already, but if you just start copying Siege Gang Commander, or if you copy Goblin Matron, because that's the big thing is you go Kiki Jiki or Goblin Matron, so you can go get anything over and over again. And remember, you're making your stuff cheaper. You've already got two Frog Tosser Bannerets, and then obviously a variety of different ways to cheat some of the cheat some of the costs. And one Goblin War Chief, of course, but like the 4 Warren Instigators. So when you have Warren Instigator, it's kind of nice having some hits that are like a big game, you know. And besides, you can also Aether Vial and just tick it up, man.
I was just thinking Aether Violin. Uh, yeah, this is a. So I mean, obviously this is a 5-0 list, but do you think like Goblins is going to be a thing in Modern?
I think when Goblin Ringleader's printed, it will be.
So this deck is just utterly heedless of Hogak. 2 Nile Spellbomb and 2 Surgical Extraction to the sideboard end.
Yeah, I can't get into that. That's just lucky to dodge.
I did want to talk about one deck to close.
Oh, you do, by the way, as a note, you do get to have a lot of ways to kill. If you want, you have access to a lot of ways to kill people's bridge from belows.
Oh, yeah, because you have so many bodies.
Well, actually, before we wrap it up too much, I mean, dude, we have to talk about this Slivers deck, dude. So Slivers Company, Deep Fried Kirby played a Slivers Company deck with 3 Cloud Shredder Slivers as sort of a new, you know, when you have 3 Gale Riders and 3 Cloud Shredders,
your Slivers fly.
I mean, that's, yeah. I don't know. It just seems like it's pretty exciting.
So I get well, so this deck has got 4 Predatory Sliver, and then 4 Sinew Sliver. Is there Muscle Slivers too, or they're not legal?
No, but there's 4 Sedge Sliver also.
Oh, Sedge Sliver is a good man.
Yeah, and then the new Dragscape Sliver.
So this deck's got the Gemhide Slivers to kind of accelerate the company on turn 3. That's the kind of acceleration push, and then basically everybody flies and everybody's big.
Well, you got to remember the key is that everybody's haste. You see, Cloud Shredder Sliver is a red-white 1/1. Slivers you control have flying and haste, and when your slivers have haste, it really makes Manawef Sliver crazy. You know, you have both Gemhide Sliver and Manawef Sliver. So
I think I might get behind this deck. Everybody has everything in this deck, right?
Yeah. And so, like, the ability to play a Sliver and then immediately tap it for mana with Manawef Sliver or Gemhide Sliver. It's kind of interesting, the decision to play a mix of 2 Gemhide Slivers and 2 Manawef Slivers. Like, Manawef Sliver's just better, but maybe the thought here is that there just aren't enough people playing with Mutavaults to punish you. Or I guess it doesn't even matter there, but it's just so unlikely that anybody else has Slivers, so you just don't care, and you'd rather just be less vulnerable to, like, Maelstrom Pulse or whatever.
That's fair. I mean, but it's also possible that more than 4 copies is the optimal number, right?
Yeah, but he's just playing 2 and 2 here.
Yeah.
What's the deck? Oh, dude, actually, I'm sorry. I can't. There's just so many sick ones. I just don't want to. I don't want to miss out on this ridiculous Planeswalker deck, man. With this 4-color Deploy the Gatewatch deck, with Ajani Vengeance, Ashiok Dreamrender, Chandra Torch of Defiance, Gideon of the Trials, Gideon Ally of Zendikar, Jace the Mind Sculptor, Kaya Orzo Usurper, Narset Part of Veil, Sarkin the Masterless, Teferi Hero Dominaria, and Teferi Time Raveler, all in the same deck. Handpin Naramono is a total sicko. Pulling it together with 4 Interplanar Beacon, 4 Prismatic Vista, and 4 Field of Ruin.
And 4 Arkham's Astrolabe.
And 4 Arkham's Astrolabe, which is very important here. 2 Deploy the Gatewatch going over the top. What do you think? He's even got Teo the Shield Mage in the sideboard, man.
Wow.
This is just, like, have you ever seen the format could just get flipped like this?
I wouldn't even have.
This is so many cards.
Imagine that this was a strategy.
It's Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Dude, so several people actually did well with various taking turns decks, including Daniel Wong's top 8 finish at the Grand Prix. And this doesn't even have Nexus of Fate. This is taking turns with Time Warp, Part the Water Veil, Temporal Mastery, and if you squint, Exhaustion, Cryptic Command, and Giga Drowse.
So how do you only have 3 Temporal Mastery? Like, the second is Jace the Mind Sculptor. Like, the whole problem with Temporal Mastery is you already had it, right? If you can put it back, like, how is this not the best one?
I mean, sometimes you just draw cards. I don't know. You only have 2 Jace the Mind Sculptors. I don't think it's that bad to play 3 Temporal Mastery.
Like, how much worse is Temporal Mastery than Time Warp?
It's pretty bad to draw. Like, I think if you have 1 Temporal Mastery and 1 Time Warp, it's so much better for you than if you have 2 Temporal Masteries. And I think you don't have to Temporal Mastery very many times before you're getting diminishing returns compared to just drawing a Time Warp.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I would like to live in the world where you play 4 Temporal Mastery, but I could believe it otherwise.
And then I love Part the Water Veil. I've always loved that card. It's
You got to win somehow.
good way to win. What's the recursion in this deck?
4 Snapcaster Mages, and a lot of ways to bounce them, like 1 Snapback, 2 Cryptic Command, 2 Jace the Mind Sculptor could bounce it. Because remember, once you get it going, you can just keep Jacing your Snapcaster Mage every turn and Snapcastering a different Time Walk. And that's part of the reason why you need stuff like Time Warp and stuff, and not just Temporal Mastery. Remember, when you Temporal Mastery, you have to actually exile it. And the same is true with Part the Water Veil. If you Time Warp, it actually just goes to your graveyard so that you can Snapcaster Mage it over and over again.
Excellent point.
So I think Time Warp is the best one. What do you think? Does this deck have staying power? I mean, you're obviously doing that thing with 4 Dictative Crufix and 1 Howling Mine to try to get enough cards, but I can't help but wonder, why not play Narset?
Narset seems good.
Yeah, why not play Narset?
Narset seems fantastic in the context of like a Howling Mine Dictate deck, right?
Yeah. If you just have Narset, Dictative Crufix is going to give him the business.
I mean, why is Dictative Crufix in a blue-red deck? Like, this deck has got, like, Temple of Epiphany, Sulphur Falls, etc., better than Fevered Visions?
I don't really have a good answer for you. Fevered Vision seems better to me.
Yeah, Fevered Vision seems like the correct card to play in this deck. Because then you would just win, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Fevered Vision seems amazing. Yeah, I like Fevered Visions.
All right. Daniel Wong, write that one down. Good job on your Grand Prix top 8. But next time, Fevered Visions.
Dude, Flash, man.
Yeah, I don't think Flash is that big of a deal in this deck. All right, this isn't like a counterspell deck. I guess
Dude,
it's got 2 Cryptic Commands.
Dude, what about Azorius Spirits? Judgecraft, rocking. I mean, so Giver of Runes being a new addition, it's not even a spirit, but it's just helping protect the combo. But what you're really doing is using 3 Force of Negation to help protect your you've got the whole Rattle Chains, Remorseful Cleric, Supreme Phantom, Spellqueller, Drug Skull Captain, Eidolon of Rhetoric. That's a spirit.
I don't know. It seems like lots of things are viable right now that are enabled by some of the new stuff. I'm just really surprised at how many decks that weren't Bridgevine did well this past weekend across so many different tournaments. And the thing that makes me sad, though, is that makes me feel like they're not going to ban a lot of Bridgevine cards.
Sadly, I agree. Dude, okay, I swear, this is the last one. 5-color Niv Mizzet. Dude, this deck, NHA 37s, this is everything we dreamed of on the podcast a couple months ago. 3 Niv Mizzet Reborn, plus You've got 3 Bring to Light plus 3 Glittering Wish, and the Glittering Wish obviously have access to both Niv Mizzet Reborn and Bring to Light. And so the deck is all gold cards except for the Birds of Paradise. Here are a few choice morsels. 2 Safe Right Quest. So you can get a little mana fixing, 3 Lightning Helix and 2 Kolaghan's Command, Akaya's Guile, and Is It Charm, 3 Assassin's Trophies, Tension Sphere. Kind of the mix and removal, more or less what we're talking about.
How does Siege Rhino work in this deck?
How does Siege Rhino work in this deck?
Yeah. It doesn't get it, right?
Right. Like, Siege Rhino here is apparently just so that you can bring to light for the Siege Rhino because you just like it.
I mean, I can respect liking the Siege Rhino.
It's a little wild, though, to go all this trouble and then just not play, like, to have some of your gold cards not eligible hits.
It's also weird to me that there's Safe Right Quest in the sideboard. Like,
are you really? I guess when you Glittering Wish for Safe Right Quest, I mean, it's a way to get a 3rd mana.
That is a tough way to do it.
Yeah, that might be a little fancy.
I mean, Glittering Wish is such a high leverage card.
You need something to go get.
Basic Forest.
Well, you need something to go get. I don't know that it's bad.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying it's tough. Times is
definitely
tough sometimes.
Yeah. Was there one more you wanted to hit, or
There
do
is.
we hit? Yeah.
Just close it out. There were a lot of really cool, innovative new decks, new strategies.
Don't be burned.
Hogak performed as we assumed, and yet, in the last tournament, the classic, the winner, Red White Burn. Just wanted to note some important changes in this deck. First of all, John Philip Whetstone went back up to 20 lands. We've seen a lot of 19 land burn decks.
Sunbay Canyon to do that.
Went back up to 20, not just for the Sunbay Canyon, but to make sure that he could cast a 2 casting cost card like Rest in Peace, I think, at a high level of regularity on turn 2. This is like it's just a subtly very, very twisted burn deck, right? So Rest in Peace and Tormod's Crypt as 6 slots in the sideboard is a lot, right, of graveyard hate, but very subtly, because he knows he's siding in Rest in Peace, and probably also because he's anticipating people having stuff like those ley lines you talked about main deck. No Grim Lavamancer main or side. That is a steep cut.
Well, it's also the popularity of things like Lava Dart,
Yeah. Yep. Is there no Light Up the Stage in this deck?
There's Skewer the Critics, but no Light Up the Stage.
Maybe Sunbay Canyon takes the Light Up the Stage slot. That is something I'll have to explore. I'm a big fan of Light Up the Stage in Modern, in Burn, so that would be one thing that I'd be thinking about. But just wanted to shout out to this deck. I was very surprised that this was able to be a performer, given the fact that the Urza's deck was known, that Hogak exists. Like this, or that Urza's deck seems like a disaster for Burn, right? Like there's so many like random not finale combinations of cards that just generate a ton of life and power.
And what's more, I mean, John Philip Whetstone, if you notice, just 2 copies of Wear Tear. Without having as many, I mean, you're used to having nice things like 4 copies of some artifact kill that does damage to the face. 2 copies of Wear Tear is not exactly the most robust anti-artifact package.
No, this is the choice of somebody who had to devote their sideboard cards to graveyard hate. Like, just how much utility can I get in those remaining slots that I have left in my 15?
Yep.
But happy to see Burn on top of one of these tournaments.
I'm sure you are. Definitely a nice showing from John Philip Whetstone. Dude, we didn't even talk about Lightning Skelemental. This format is so crazy. I look forward to seeing what all we see next with it, and with Barcelona fast approaching, I'm starting to get excited because this seems like just the most wide open, crazy landscape in a long time.
Oh yeah, it seems to me like that.
Given that you just are, warp everything around Hogak, and actually Hogak's broken.
Well, yeah, but at least there are other things that are viable, right? The thing I was worried about was like Hogak was so good that was the only thing that people would play. But that doesn't look like to be the case.
Yep, not yet.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play Dredge, so jail or hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in a vault with nothing but time. Parents and my friends were the key to find. Magic gave me purpose and drive. The game, the love, it kept me alive. Visions of better weather, light inside. See through the mirage, gotta survive. Dreaming someday I find a way. Gotta repay the game we played.